Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Joseph Nounou. He is a physician turned pharmaceutical innovator. He's developed a novel medication to rescue people experiencing drug overdose, cardiac arrest, and other respiratory problems. So we'll talk about all this and more. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me, AJ.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. What we said we'll talk about, especially around revolutionizing emergency medicine and all that you have done or are doing. But before we come to this, let's understand a bit more about you for the audience, Joe. A bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Fantastic, AJ. By way of introduction, I am an anesthesiologist who has transitioned into a pharmaceutical innovator. And I made this transition during the COVID era, we'll call it. I saw that the community was being ravaged increasingly by drug overdoses, and the strength of the illicit pharmaceuticals or the illicit drugs like fentanyl were so powerful, and the doses were so large that naloxone and Narcan were not able to effectively treat somewhere between 50 and 100,000 people a year. That meant that these drugs were claiming about 300 lives a day, and I knew something had to be done about it, and started getting to work, and brought us to where we are today. 3.5 years later, we've developed a working model. We've got proof of concept stuff pending, and we're going to talk more about that. So that's a little bit of background and how I got to be here today.
Right, Joseph. So tell us a bit about this big problem. Is it so big that so many people land up in emergency care, or they need this thing called rescue therapy? Help us understand the extent of the problem, and then we'll understand about the solutions.
Fantastic, AJ. The extent of the problem in the United States, it's really an epidemic. So we know that during times of economic hardship, the number of people who turn to drugs increases. And there's a whole conversation that could happen about that. And we've been seeing an increased rate in the number of deaths from drug overdoses, about 10% every year for at least the last decade or two. It's been going on for a long time, and it's getting worse. It seems to be worse in the United States than it is in other countries for reasons that aren't quite clear. So what we've determined is that the extent of this epidemic is so severe, and the treatment options are really quite limited. Again, the Narcan nasal spray is really the only thing bystanders have to help these folks. The medical teams and the rescue squads get called out, many times a day, especially in certain states like Ohio, West Virginia. I believe Arkansas is another big state. And it's really not limited to those states, but those are the primary states where this is happening. And it really is a serious problem, AJ.
Right. And to talk a bit more about this problem, is it more of a medical problem, Joseph, or is it more of a social problem, or is it more of a legal problem, administrative problem, or is it more of a political problem? I will come to your solution, but I want to understand a doctor's mind on this.
I tell you what, AJ, that question is a loaded one. An excellent question, and you clearly have a good understanding. It is all of the above. And I'm not being political here. I'm not throwing stones. It's a very complicated problem, AJ, because we have illegal drugs coming into the country from our southern border through our ports. I know our Drug Enforcement Administration is doing what they can, but the fentanyl is so strong. You can take a very small quantity and distribute it to many people. So if you can get one backpack of fentanyl pills through the border, a lot of people will die from that. So it's so strong. You don't need big buses full of drugs like you might with marijuana. Marijuana, of course, comes in big packages. Fentanyl is so small. A piece of fentanyl, 1,000th the size of a Tylenol pill, is enough to kill some people. That's how strong it is. So you have the political side. Maybe they're not enforcing laws very well. Maybe we're not being strong enough on drug dealers. Maybe we're not helping folks who have mental health disorders and getting them the help they need. I'm not claiming to have those solutions. That is a very complex topic, but we have politics, we have mental health, we have law enforcement. It's socioeconomic. Actually, it's not just socioeconomic. It's social, but it's not just socioeconomic. It affects the very rich and the very poor and everybody in between.
Right. And so let's look at the present solutions. What are the present solutions? One is that the authorities get a call about this, paramedics go to that place and try to do whatever they can. And the second is the emergency care. Either somebody comes in or comes in by himself or herself. Less possibility, somebody else brings them there. What is the present sort of, protocol that we have, or the medicines we have at the moment? Are they not enough that you had to step in somebody who was, anesthesiologist, if I may tell correctly, and move into the pharmaceutical side of things?
So, if I'm understanding your question, yeah, the current methodology is when if somebody succumbs to drug overdose, so they collapse, they stop breathing. In some areas that are very heavily affected by this drug problem, lots of people are now carrying the naloxone or the Narcan nasal spray, which I think is a good thing, because the sooner you help people, the sooner the greater their chance that they're going to live and get a second chance at life. The brain starts dying in 5 minutes. So if somebody finds somebody who's collapsed, if a woman happens to have this medication in her purse, she can start giving that medicine while the paramedics are on their way. They arrive, and I talked to some paramedics. They said they've given 10, 11, 12 doses of Narcan before somebody wakes up. So it takes time. It's expensive. And when you start giving that big of doses, you start running into other problems, the side effects of the medication. That includes a condition called pulmonary edema that affects the lungs, makes it so water gets into the lungs and they can't take oxygen into the bloodstream. So these folks end up getting taken to the hospital. They admitted to the hospital. And the whole time, once you give somebody naloxone and they wake up, they're angry. They're in acute drug withdrawal. They're not in their right minds. They're out of control. So these are all serious problems. It's expensive. It's timely. It takes a long time to get somebody back breathing sometimes. And now they're awake and they're combative. So that's the current situation.
Right, right. And what are the challenges are they not enough? Or do they have more side effects? And then we talk about your solution.
So the challenges are that people are overdosing on such large quantities of fentanyl that they're not able to effectively treat it with normal doses of Narcan. Sometimes it takes many doses. And if you're relying on bystanders to help, there may not be 10 doses of Narcan in the handful of people who are around you. You're lucky to have one. So there's that issue. The side effects, once you start giving a lot of Narcan, is that you get the water in the lungs, pulmonary edema. So that's a big issue. And the other issue, and we haven't talked about this yet, but I'll touch on it in this context, is that you have people who have not just taken fentanyl, but maybe they've taken fentanyl and a new drug that's on the street called xylazine, which is a tranquilizer. And because it's not an opiate, the Narcan doesn't work on it. Narcan only works on opiates. So we have people who are taking additional substances and they all work together to reduce breathing. And these folks are not able to be treated with Narcan.
Okay, okay. And then your medicine comes in, whatever form it is. I don't know. You'll be able to tell. When did you think about this? When did you start? Did you have? How did you get this enough qualifications? The medical, pharmaceutical industry was not qualified to do it. You had a better understanding. What helped you have a better understanding? Is it about the previous work that you were doing, or is it you were had much more zeal to solve this problem? Help us understand a bit about understanding your transition from being a physician turning into a pharmaceutical innovator.
That's a fantastic discussion right there. Great talking point. So my background and as an anesthesiologist really does set me up very nicely for this sort of work. I'm able to see firsthand the effects of these medications. I'm able to see firsthand of the limitations of these medications. I'm in a region of the United States that's highly exposed to this sort of drug problem. So it's been in my face the whole time. It's been getting bad. So I first came up with this idea in 2017, and I didn't know a single thing about the pharmaceutical industry, but I had a friend who has a friend who's in the pharmaceutical industry. So he set me up with him, and I started asking him questions. I said, "So Rob, what do you think about this, or what should I do there?" And he's like, I don't know, but I can tell you a guy I can point you to a guy that you should talk to. And I started talking to him, and his name was Tom. And Tom's like, yeah, I can help you kind of get the basic ideas of like what we're looking at. But there's another guy you should talk to. So I started talking to this other guy named Gaylord. And Gaylord was really good about helping me understand the market and the feasibility of this idea. But Gaylord says, if you're going to make this happen, this drug in its current form isn't gonna work. So you've got to find another solution. So then I went back to the drawing board. I started working, in my own lab. I built a lab, bought the lab equipment, and I've got a good understanding of chemistry. There's so much information you can find on the internet, and I think one of the questions you asked, it's a very important one, is why did nobody else in the pharmaceutical industry do this? And I think the answer is it got missed. So, and that seems crazy, but right now the pharmaceutical industry is very much focused on cancer. They're focused on obesity. They're focused on the consistent problems that we have: diabetes, blood pressure, cholesterol, and then because the rewards are very high for what we call rare diseases and rare conditions, they're focused very much on that. So this entity, this condition, even though it affects millions of people, really gets overlooked. It's kind of it's too big to overlook, in my opinion, but it's too small to be picked up by a lot of these major pharmaceutical companies. I think if they put the effort into it, or they noticed it, or they thought about it, they would have addressed it. I don't think I'm special, but I had an idea and have tested it out and worked through challenges to get to where we are.
Right. So these sort of drugs, if I may call it, or whatever it is it has to go through the same process like any other drug? Human trials, animal trials, all sort of trials. Did it work that way? Did you get the? Do you need US FDA permission for this?
Absolutely, yes. So far, we've done preclinical trials. Those are trials and studies done on animals, and we've passed. And that's basically to prove that the medication works as intended. And we've got that data. And actually, just last week, we've reached out to the FDA to engage them. Now, this is a really cool thing. The FDA process, the clinical trials, typically takes 7 years. But because of the qualities of this medication and the need that it fills, we are highly confident, and we've been told by folks in the industry, we should expect the FDA to designate this as a fast track medication. That means that instead of the 7 years that it typically takes to get a medication through these trials to get it to market, we could get this done in as little as 2 years. So we're very excited about that prospect.
Right. So right now it is not in the market. It is with the application with the US FDA. Where do we go from here? Do we wait for the US FDA, or is there a way that can it can be it is getting tested only in animals and maybe human trials?
So good question. So the cool thing is, AJ, this medication that we're delivering is what we're calling it's a repurposing of an old molecule. That means that the medication has already been this molecule has already been through rigorous FDA trials and testing, and through those trials, it's been proven to be safe and effective for those needs. What we don't have is data on this new formulation and if it's going to be effective in what we're trying to do. So that's going to shorten the time going forward. And the next step, as you clearly are interested in and is critical to this conversation, is how do we get it from here to the market? And really, AJ, the best thing that could happen for the people that are suffering from this and for our community is for a pharmaceutical company who's established, who has the background and the finances and is interested in the mission of saving lives for this really critical population, that they would contact me, they'd reach out and they'd say, Dr. Nounou, we want to work with you. We want to bring this to market. And we've got the skills, we've got the know-how, we've got the finances. Let's work together. Let's make a partnership and let's bring this out together. Honestly, AJ, that's the best way forward because it's very much a money limited item. These drug research trials will probably cost about $50 million. And, it's if somebody has the capital ready to go, that means that we don't have to waste time trying to raise that money.
Right. So you expect it to, if everything goes well, then maybe in the next 2 years it should be with the people.
I'd say from the time that we partner with a pharmaceutical company, it'll be about 2.5 years. So, and AJ, I have no idea when that'll happen. I could get a call as a result of this live stream of this podcast, and that could take us into the future, or through contacts and friends. I don't know, but I do believe God is guiding this plan. He's led us every single step of the way and hasn't failed us yet, and he won't fail us in the future. It'll happen when it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, whether my live stream or not, I do not hold that much of. But one thing I know that there are thousands and thousands of families, parents, people who have suffered, who are suffering. They can have a lot of, lot of push and pull for onto the administration, and they see that this is something that is there. They can certainly exert whatever public pressure that can be there, so that at least they have a better or a faster look at such things. But one thing, how does it compare or is better than the existing medications that are already there?
Fantastic question. I'm so glad you asked that. So, as I mentioned, the naloxone can take multiple doses. In high enough doses, it can cause pulmonary edema, fluid in the lungs, and it doesn't work at all for people who are not breathing, caused by other pharmaceutical agents, non-opiates, or by cardiac arrest. This medication works specifically in the brain and in the respiratory centers, telling the body to breathe. So it works completely differently. It's not trying to block any drug. And where naloxone causes people to wake up suddenly and angry and become combative and dangerous to themselves and to people around them, this medication doesn't do that. It actually doesn't wake people up at all. It just makes them breathe. And we can do that with a single dose. So it's going to be less expensive, less side effects, less dangerous to the people around them and to the patient themselves. And because it doesn't have to block any particular medications, it actually works with all causes and also has a potential to work with people who've stopped breathing because they've had a heart attack while out on a walk or in public. And that's the beauty of this medication, is it's got such a wide array of possibilities to help people who are not breathing, regardless of cause.
Regardless of cost. And talking of cost, how costly will it be vis-a-vis the options available right now? Will it cost more because it is different, or will it cost less because it is there for the public good?
AJ, I'm so happy you asked that question. I mentioned when I'm partnering with a pharmaceutical company about sharing the mission, the public good and public accessibility has to be of utmost importance. If it's expensive, it's not going to get out there to the people who need it. So the price point that we're targeting is the same price point that Narcan was before it went out over the counter. So Narcan, you get a box of the Narcan nasal spray here in the United States. It was $135 for two of those nasal sprays. It's now come down to $45, which I think is a great thing. This medication I expect will still cost about $135. However, where sometimes it takes 10 rounds of the naloxone or the Narcan nasal spray, you have a single round of this medication. So it's actually going to be less expensive in the long run. It's more expensive for the single dose, but because you only need one, it's going to be less expensive. And because there is such a tremendous need for it and it has so many applications, the volume of sales is high enough that we don't have to charge a lot of money per use. We can charge a little bit of money, we can make a healthy profit, and we can still save people and keep the medication accessible.
Absolutely, absolutely. All I hope is that you get this permission soon without knowing much about it, whatever I could learn on the show itself. But the bigger hope is that more and more people should leave taking such things, so that the cure of that sort is never required. Be that as it may, I am sure a lot of people would want to understand and know more about this, more about you, Joe. And for those people who would want to perhaps invest into your company, be a part of what you are doing, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Best way to connect with me right now is going to be through my website. That's at aurospharma.com, AUROS Pharma, PHARMA.com, aurospharma.com. On there is there are ways you can contact us and you send us information. You can follow our social media profiles, contact me there in the messages. I review all that information. I would love to discuss collaborations, investors, and if anybody has any way I can help them or answer any questions for them specifically, I'm happy to help. I'm a normal, approachable person, and I want to be able to just help people.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much, AJ. It's been an absolute pleasure.